The champagne was cold, but the humiliation was burning. Under the gilded rafters of the grand ballroom, Dominic Toretto Corleone didn't just break a vow. He executed a legacy. With a steady hand and a heart turned to flint, he leaned away from the woman who had built his empire alongside him and pressed a kiss onto the trembling lips of a girl half her age. It was a declaration of war masked as a social debut. But as the clock struck midnight and the echoes of scandal filled the air, the seat beside him went cold. His wife, Elisa Skywalker Everdeen, was gone. Not just from the table and not just from the room. She had vanished into the humid night air, leaving behind nothing but a shattered glass of vintage Bordeaux and a silence that felt like a noose tightening around the throat of the city. The air in the ballroom of the Toretto Corleone estate usually smelled of expensive orchids and old money, but tonight, it reeked of betrayal. I want to welcome every single one of you joining us for this intense journey. Whether you're watching from the bustling streets of New York, the quiet corners of London, or anywhere in between. How are you all doing today? I truly hope you're ready for a story that explores the darkest corners of the human heart. Before we dive into the mystery of Elisa's disappearance, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and join our community. Your support means the world to me, and it ensures you never miss a moment of these cinematic tales. Now let's look closer at the night the world fell apart. Dominic stood at the apex of the marble staircase, his hand resting possessively on the waist of Juliana, a woman whose only merit was her youth and her willingness to look at him as if he were a god. Below them, 300 of the country's most powerful figures held their breath. This wasn't just a party. It was a coronation of a new era, one where the old guard, represented by the stoic, brilliant Elisa, was being discarded for something shiny and controllable. Dominic's eyes scanned the crowd, looking for the flash of emerald silk that Elisa had worn. He expected to see her crying in a corner or perhaps glaring with the quiet dignity he had come to loathe because it reminded him of his own moral failings. He wanted her to see him choose. He wanted the sting of his public rejection to be the final blow to her pride. To the future, Dominic announced, his voice booming, vibrating through the crystal chandeliers. He raised his glass to Juliana. To a life unburdened by the ghosts of the past. A ripple of uneasy applause followed. But as Dominic turned his head toward the VIP table where Elisa had been seated only moments before, his blood turned to ice. The chair was empty. A single dark red stain from a spilled drink was spreading across the white linen like a fresh wound. Dominic's pulse began to hammer against his ribs, a frantic, uneven rhythm. First it was pique. How dare she leave during his moment? How dare she rob him of the satisfaction of seeing her break? He signaled to his lead security detail, a man with a face like etched granite. Find her, Dominic hissed, the mask of the celebratory host slipping for a fraction of a second. Bring her back to the table. I won't have her making a scene by disappearing. But as the minutes bled into an hour, the irritation shifted into something sharper, something more jagged. His security team returned, their faces pale under the strobe lights of the dance floor. The north gate was locked. The south gate had been guarded all night. No cars had left the estate. The security cameras in the hallway leading to the gardens had flickered into static at exactly 11:58 p.m. Dominic walked to the edge of the terrace, looking out over the sprawling, lightless woods that bordered their property. The wind howled through the trees, sounding uncannily like a woman's scream or perhaps a laugh. He looked down at the stone floor and saw it, Elisa's wedding ring. It hadn't been placed there. It looked as though it had been thrown with such force that it had chipped the marble. The realization hit him like a physical blow to the solar plexus. Elisa hadn't just walked away in a fit of pique. The woman who knew every secret of his offshore accounts, every blood-stained deal he had made to reach the top, and every weakness he hid behind his tailored suits, was gone. And as he stared into the darkness, a chilling thought took root. Did she leave because her heart was broken, or did she leave because she had finally finished setting the fuse? The question hung in the air, heavier than the humidity of the impending storm. If Elisa was gone, the protection she provided, the political shield her family name offered, was gone too. Dominic looked back at Juliana, who was giggling at a joke she didn't understand, and for the first time in 20 years, the most powerful man in the state felt a cold, prickling sensation of pure, unadulterated terror. The silence that followed Elisa's disappearance wasn't peaceful. It was a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the room. Dominic stood on the terrace, his fingers tracing the cold, jagged gold of the discarded wedding ring. To the world, Dominic Toretto Corleone was a titan. A man who had turned a crumbling shipping legacy into a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate through sheer ruthless willpower. But as he stood there, the weight of the ring felt like a leaden anchor. Dominic's power had always been half mirage. The true architect of the Toretto Corleone rise was the woman who was currently missing. Elisa Skywalker Everdeen wasn't just a wife. She was a strategist whose mind worked like a grandmaster's on a chessboard. She came from the old money Skywalker lineage, diplomats and judges who moved the strings of the city from behind velvet curtains. When she married Dominic, she brought the legitimacy he craved. She smoothed over his rough edges, turned his legal liabilities into tax incentives, and stood by him through 3 federal investigations that should have ended in life sentences. But as the years passed, Dominic grew to resent the very pedestal she had built for him. Every time he looked at her, he didn't see a partner. He saw a mirror reflecting his own insecurities. He saw a woman who knew exactly how much blood was on his hands. Juliana was different. Juliana was a blank slate. A girl who saw the lion and didn't know about the scavengers he'd had to kill to become one. Dominic, is everything all right? People are starting to whisper. The voice belonged to Arthur Shelby Holloway, Dominic's younger half-brother and the head of their discreet operations. Arthur was a man of twitchy energy and sharp suits, always looking for a fire to put out or a pocket to pick. Unlike Dominic, Arthur had always feared Elisa. He called her the Ice Queen to her face, but behind her back he called her the General. She's gone, Arthur, Dominic said, his voice a low growl. He didn't look away from the dark tree line. Gone? What do you mean? Did she take the Bentley? No cars left. The gates were logged. She just vanished. And the cameras went dark at midnight. Arthur's face went from confused to deadly serious in a heartbeat. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the lingering guests couldn't hear. Dominic, if she's gone to the authorities or if she's gone to her father's estate with the ledger, we're dead. Not bankrupt, dead. Federal prison for 3 lifetimes dead. The ledger. It was the one thing Dominic had never been able to find. It was a small leather-bound book where Elisa kept the real numbers, the bribes, the hush-money payments to the dockworkers' unions, and the names of every judge who had a Toretto Corleone payroll account. She had always told him it was their insurance policy. Tonight it felt like a death warrant. She wouldn't, Dominic snapped, though the conviction in his voice was paper-thin. She loves this life. She loves the status. She loved you, Dominic, Arthur countered, a rare moment of honesty breaking through his cynical exterior. And you just spent 2 hours rubbing her face in the dirt in front of the people she spent 20 years impressing. Hell hath no fury, brother. As they spoke, a third figure joined them. Sloane Ferris Bueller, Elisa's closest friend and the estate's primary legal counsel. Sloane was a shark in a Chanel suit, her eyes darting between the 2 men with predatory precision. Where is she, Dominic? Sloane asked, her voice tight with a suppressed rage that surprised even him. I don't know, Sloane. I assume she's hiding in one of the guest houses, waiting for me to come crawling back and apologize. I just checked the guest houses, Sloane said, stepping into Dominic's personal space. I checked the stables. I checked the wine cellar. Her phone is on her vanity. Her passport is in the safe. But the safe is open, Dominic. Dominic felt a cold sweat break out across his brow. What's missing? The Skywalker signet, Sloane whispered. And the deed to the offshore holding company in the Caymans. The one that holds 60% of your personal liquidity. Dominic's knees felt weak. He grabbed the terrace railing to steady himself. This wasn't a heartbroken wife running away to cry. This was a hostile takeover from within. Elisa hadn't just disappeared, she had started a countdown. Deep down, Dominic's greatest fear wasn't losing the money. It was the realization that he didn't actually know the woman he had slept next to for 2 decades. He had treated her like a piece of furniture, elegant, functional, and permanent. He had forgotten that furniture could be moved. He had forgotten that a cornered queen is the most dangerous piece on the board. Call everyone, Dominic ordered Arthur, his voice regaining its edge. Scour every inch of this county. If she's on foot, she can't have gone far. And Arthur, if you see her, do not, under any circumstances, let her reach a phone. And Juliana? Arthur asked, gesturing toward the girl who was now looking for Dominic with a pout on her face. Get her a car and get her out of here, Dominic barked. The party is over. As the guests were ushered out and the lights of the ballroom were dimmed, the house took on a skeletal, haunting quality. Dominic walked into Elise's dressing room. It smelled of her perfume, jasmine and rain. It was a scent that had always meant home to him, but now it felt like a taunt. He noticed a small envelope tucked into the corner of the mirror. It was addressed to him in her perfect, looped cursive. With trembling fingers he tore it open. Inside was no letter. There was only a single dried black dahlia, the flower he had given her on their first date, and a note that read, You chose the shadow. Now live in it. Dominic felt a shiver race down his spine. The mystery wasn't just about where she went. It was about what she had left behind to destroy him. Before he could process the note, his phone buzzed. It was an anonymous text from an encrypted number. The first secret falls at dawn. Watch the news, Dom. The clock on the mantel ticked, a rhythmic, metallic heartbeat. The game had begun, and for the first time in his life, Dominic Toretto Corleone was playing without a single card in his hand.